Welcome to the speaker series on a shot glass of recovery.
Yeah. You get a house, you get a car, then you start thinking that's all you are, but you don't know the truth. So let me spell it out for you. Now I got your attention, now there's a start. Now sit and listen to my favorite part. Life's been giving us some clues. The answer lies inside of your.
Welcome to the speaker series on a shot glass of recovery. Hi, I'm your host, Lisa M. Thanks for joining me again. Just a quick reminder to subscribe, like, or follow if you like the show on any of your favorite listening platforms. If you like the speakers and other content on the podcast, please show us some love by leaving a review and consider making a PayPal contribution to help keep the show going at paypal.me/a shot glass of recovery. Every dollar makes a difference, and we thank you. Our speakers come from my AA home group, AA Solution Seekers. We meet every day at 7 a.m., so pop in sometime and say hello. Until then, here is more experience, strength, and hope from one of our guests' lips to your speakers.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, everybody, for giving me the opportunity to speak here this morning. I'm an alcoholic. My name is Kyle H. Could we get this started with the serenity prayer? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. All right. Hopefully God can help me set aside my ego and what I want to say so that the message can come through. Because the bottom line of this is, I have some statistics, I guess. I'll go with those first. I have a sobriety date of October 17th of 2020. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor. I have a home group, Monday Night Men's at Club 24. I have a service job there because those are all the things and I sponsor people when I'm asked. And that's what keeps me sober today. It still works. And as the book says, it works in rough going because life has a way of life and it shows up. And all of those things, no matter what ends up happening, whatever external circumstances, those things don't just keep me from not drinking. They keep me on an even keel and they keep me able to respond. As other people have, I think, noted here that there's the responsibility pledge, if anyone knows that. Typically, it's the one that if you hate the Lord's Prayer, you'll say that one instead. But it's just as important because now, today, I do have the ability to respond. Whereas beforehand, I was just reacting to everything that was happening. Everything I was feeling or thinking, that was kind of my main mode. But nowadays, I can pause, I can reflect, I can look, and I can see if I can be of any help or if I just need to be more hands off. And that's not me. None of that comes from Kyle. I have no power of which to do that. And if I did, I would have just done it. But alcohol is the great persuader, and it persuaded me to a state of reasonableness. So I'll tell you what it was like for me, what happened, and then what it's like today a little bit more, and how the steps are kind of still working in my life and how I work them. So I grew up in this small town called Geneva, Ohio, very tiny rural town. I grew up with two, loving parents. My dad was away mostly, and my mom was pretty much working all the time. So I was kind of growing up by myself, more or less. Now, I don't want to give you my childhood here to say, here's all my trauma that I went through, because trauma isn't what gave me alcoholism. And I work with a lot of guys who really do take that sort of attitude. Trauma gives me an inventory. I'm an alcoholic because I'm an alcoholic. And, there are many guys who I work with who want to know the reason why. And I say, look, looking for the reason why you're an alcoholic is kind of like looking for the reason the ship is sinking while you're on the ship. Really doesn't matter right now. I'm sure that that's a fine reason that you and your therapist can work out. But for right now, I want to get you into the solution. I need this ship to stop sinking. That's the main thing here. And you can go back forth reasons why, but I'll just set the scene for my first drink here because I firmly believe that my alcoholic behavior was there right from the get before the bottle ever touched my lips. Am I going to say I was an alcoholic right as I was born? Perhaps, maybe, but I can say that that scene was set and that train was always coming into that station. I lied often. not to hurt you and not to, not to like get what I wanted, but always to get me out of trouble. That was my rationalization as a child, and I carried it into adulthood, is that if I lied to save my own skin, well, then I would win, you would win, because you wouldn't care. And that's been characterized in all aspects of my using and drinking. I I always felt like I had to be the one to make something happen. I had to be the one to push that rock uphill, because if I wasn't about to do it, then it wasn't about to happen. And nobody was around in my family to really talk about things in a certain way. We didn't like talk about our feelings, or like they were like, "Okay, Kyle, I love you. If you're going through something, good luck, friend." That's just kind of the mode it was. It wasn't that they didn't care. It's just we didn't talk about that stuff. Like your feelings are your feelings. You're like your privates. You keep those to yourself, know, and don't show them to anybody else here, please. So getting to my first drink here, I constantly felt like as a teenager, I was just weird inside. I always felt there was something different about me, and I couldn't quite explain what that was. I kind of felt like there was always something between you and me, and I could never put my finger on it. And you could have invited me somewhere and we could have been best friends, and I still would have felt like there was something that was just gnawing at me, like you didn't really like me or you didn't love me. And it wasn't just self-esteem, it was this wall I couldn't get past. And I didn't like myself this time. And so when I was about 18 was when I started to really seek out alcohol. Now, for some that might be a little later, I was desperately afraid to start using. I had a big using history in my family, and my father told me, he said, "Kyle, if you use, I'm gonna really hurt you." And that wasn't like an idle threat. He would have really hurt me until I didn't care anymore. And that also is true of a lot of the disease, and how my experience with it was, I cared until I didn't. I won't do this because I really care until I don't, and that changes often. So I remember I'll I I went to a friend's house. He was throwing this party, and I was looking forward to it all week. And the red flags of my drinking and my using started right away. And as an alcoholic, I run through fields of red flags. I don't see them. In fact, I have a grant sponsor who says that alcoholics have an acute ability to ignore things that other people take note of. So for my first drink, I drank a Heineken. I didn't like it. I was like, "Why would you drink this? It tastes like skunks." And then I drank Jack Daniels. Now, I didn't necessarily care for the taste, but I loved what it did. I loved what it did right away. If it separated me from me, and I had been looking for that for so long. I finally felt I finally felt confident. I felt funny. I felt a part of it at last. I wasn't on the outside looking in. I was finally in it. And the static in the attic finally shut off. And that's when I had arrived right at that very first moment. They said I got naked. I wrestled another guy who was there. He was also naked. So it was very Greco-Roman, which should have been a red flag right away, that this makes me go, bananas, cuckoo bananas. But I ignored that. And my first thought waking up the next day with, a freight train, pounding through my head was, I need to learn how to do that right the next time. It wasn't, "Oh, I probably shouldn't do that. Oh, that made me crazy." No, I said, "I need to figure this out. I need to work this out." Now, I want to note, I w- I didn't wake up thinking, "I'm going to do that every day for the rest of my life till my life is ruined." That wasn't it. I didn't set out to be a daily drinker from that point, but I had a feeling this was going to be in the background, in the mix, somewhere, because how else could I shut the static in the attic off? How else could I feel the way that I needed to feel? And so it kind of became a mainstay in my life for the next 10 or 15 years. Now, I do want to note, and I'll be respectful for AA here. When I came into the rooms in 2020, I came in for what I'll say is another form of alcohol, because this disease really isn't about the alcohol. It's the thinking, not the drinking. But I will be respectful and refer to it as just alcohol. Not because there weren't other things that are a part of my story. There sure as heck were. It's just not nearly as important. I need you to know that. And that if you're sitting here in this room and you're like, but I did this and I didn't drink, or if I did this and I couldn't stop, that you are in the right place. And anything that resonates in my story was meant for you. And I'm so glad that you're here and I could help, because that was the phrase that got me through, because I felt so incredibly different than other AAs, although liquid alcohol was most assuredly part of my story. I was so afraid that you would judge me for starting with something else. But every single person that I met at Club 24 and on the meetings around my area was like, anything I can do to help, I will do to help. And if it's, if it resonates in you in your truth, great, then stay here and do the thing. And if not, I encourage you to go find your truth. So anyway, sorry about that. I went to college. I started majoring in theater. Great financial choices there. I found that I really liked it, not just for the egotistical reasons. I liked it for the artistic ones too. I'll fast forward to say that through college, I got by. I met my longtime girlfriend there, who's now my wife, only by the grace of God. And I did enough to get through. The things that I cared about, I really worked hard at. The things I didn't, I chucked it, because that's another form of experience with the alcoholism for me, is that, I'll work hard at things I really care about, other things I just let go. And then I got out of college, and that's where things really started to take a turn for me, because, the wheels were starting to fall off the wagon a little bit. People were starting to question me, Kyle, are you okay? You're doing this a lot. I said, I'm doing great. How about you? I'm getting all right grades, feeling all right. Like, seems like you're the one with the issue. And then I got out, and that's when all of my expectations weren't met. And this, looking back in hindsight, one of my biggest defects of character is I will auto set expectations. I will just constantly set them for you, for me, for the job, for the situation, for my, relationship. We all need to meet these expectations that I'm secretly setting up here, silently setting to myself. And when I don't, when they're obviously not met because they're never based in reality, I get really burnt up. Like, how dare you not do this? How did this situation not go this way? How could you not see my genius here? And I was, and still am, very egotistical. That is my main issue today, the root of all my troubles. And I thought I was a genius, just waiting for you to notice that. I get out, and the world didn't go the way that I thought. I thought I would just work really hard, I'd grind it out, and you would see. But that it didn't end up happening. In about 2015 or 2016, I really went downhill, and the waves of my drinking career get higher and lower each time. And for this, I started pretty much using almost every day in some form or another. I couldn't really hold a job for anything like 8 to 9 months. My girlfriend was the one paying the bills. I was a bum, simply put. And I knew that this kind of ride couldn't last very long. And I tried, after a day of drinking and saying, I'm kind of done with this. Like, I'm done with this life. I'm over it. I've seen this movie end this way too many times. I'm kind of over it. And so I attempted suicide, and my girlfriend at the time had saved me. The next night I thought the same thing. I'm going to just continue to do that, because we didn't go to the hospital. I had wasted all of our money. There was no money to do so. And something had stayed my hand that day. There was some overwhelming feeling of saying, not yet. And it didn't come from me. And I didn't know how to identify that at the time. But that was one of my first experiences, looking back, that this was a God moment for me. And I looked at that moment and I said, okay, I am going to stick this out to the bitter end. What I didn't know then was that I was the one who was going to make it bitter. That life was just life. I was the one who was adding the seasoning there. But I knew things, excuse me, I knew things couldn't really continue in that way. Nobody ever, takes a jump off a pull-up bar when things are going great. So something needed to change here. But the thing is how my alcoholism is characterized is I feel like if I change outward circumstances, it will reflect inwardly. That if I rearrange the outside, the inside will be fixed, which obviously doesn't work. But I tried. So I threw myself even harder into my work. I threw myself harder into theater, into making making shows that I cared about, and I was very lucky to work in a local theater scene that was thriving. And by all accounts, I started to do that. Like, I started to really apply myself and do it. I was directing shows. I was acting in them. I was translating them from other languages. I was producing them. I was building them. I was lighting them. There was there was really no job at a theater that I wasn't doing at some point. I was being like as the how how it works is I was literally the director arranging the lights and the scenery in every aspect. And I was setting out to do what I thought, what I was meant to do. This was my destiny. And I felt like, when I got to the top of that mountain, when I was doing it, I literally remember looking at myself after putting on this show, translating it. It was a huge show, like 3 hours long, all these different elements. And everyone's like congratulating everybody, how well it went. And I was at the top of that mountain. And I thought to myself, I thought this would feel different. And, I didn't know it at the time, but I was trying to use this to fix me, to fill that hole, that gap between you and me. And that's what I was trying to fill. And I was filling it with all this outside stuff. And it never worked. It didn't hit. So I go back to what works. And what always worked? You already know. I went back to drinking and using. Not that I wasn't drinking and using throughout, but this time, I really went back and down into my hole. Now, this is the part of the drunk log for a lot of, long timers might be a little boring. But I feel it's one of the more important parts because for new folks, I need you to understand how I felt at that time and how I thought. Because when I was at day zero, I didn't feel like anybody thought the way that I did. My drinking more or less started to become the central piece of my schedule in all the different forms. I would wake up every day, and I don't know when I crossed the line, quote unquote, but I know that this was the point when definitely the mental obsession was even more noticeable to me. I'm sure it was noticeable to other people, but I would wake up every day. The schedule in my head would pop on, and I would say, okay, I got to go do this, 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 and then I can get back to where I need to be. Then I could go back to my office, quote unquote, and do a lot of work on me. And that would happen naturally. That wouldn't take any sort of effort at all on my part. And every night when I hit the pillow, I immediately thought, okay, and then tomorrow I have to do blah, blah, blah. And then I could get back to where I need to be. Or, oh, I have a free hour right here, which means I can go home for lunch to walk the dogs. But then, I'll just skip out on walking them or just do this, like let them out in the yard. And then I can do this. And that's how it kind of went for me. If there was an outing planned or anything like that, using or drinking had to be involved with this. There wasn't any way I was going to do it, or else we were going to be there very shortly, and then we were going to get out of there. I stopped talking to a lot of friends because for me, love was a very conditional thing. Love to me was I do nice things for you, you do nice things for me, kumbaya. And if you don't, well, you're a jerk, and I proved it. I knew it, haha. And as it turns out, a lot of people don't want to stay around an emotional vampire like that. They don't. They want to be supported unconditionally. And I couldn't provide that. I couldn't even give it to myself, let alone somebody else. And so, no, I was using people, even if I consciously wasn't aware, like, oh, that's what I'm doing. But I needed your energy. I needed your attention. And I looked for it in a lot of different avenues. I was just taking jobs at this point to just try and get by. Anything would do. And really, a lot of that money went towards alcohol in all of its forms. And the crazy part is that I didn't know how that money left my checking account. I would get paid and look there 2 days later and be like, who took all this money? I would legitimately ask myself, how did this happen? And that's the insanity of this disease is that, as it says in the doctor's opinion, I could not see the true from the false. I would hurt you and I would think it was your fault. Be like, how did you do this? Well, wouldn't you know I'd react like this? Come on, this is A, B, and C, and I didn't know how that money left my checking account. I didn't know that how I was hurting people. And that's not because we're stupid. That's because we have a disease of perception. I don't know what I don't know, and I can't see outside of myself when I'm in my cups. I can't even see me. That's the real blind spot is I cannot see the impact of things, which is where the inventory comes later. And so I'll bring you forward as to what happened. Simply put, COVID. COVID happened. I say this out of respect to everyone who's lost lives during COVID. I don't take that lightly, but COVID was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Fully end stop. I lost all 3 jobs that I was working at the time. I was working in like classrooms teaching drama. I was working at concert venues. I was doing theater, and all of that got shut down during COVID. And then I partied like there was no tomorrow, because to me, there wasn't. Now, up to COVID, I should say, I was starting to recognize like, oh, I don't use like other people. Something is different here. Like I'm beating people to the bar. Nobody really does that. I'm watching, when I have to moderate my drinking, I'm watching other people take a sip, then I take a sip. And that's after I've already had 2 beers before everybody got there. And I knew that something was strange. When other people stopped, I'd go home and I'd keep going. And I'm like, okay, I think, something's got to change here, right? But I thought I had some say in this. I thought I had some power. If I make different choices, different things happen. That's not how this works, though. So I'm partying my way through COVID, stimulus check. Thank you, taxpayers. I was making more money than I'd ever made before, and I blew it all. Thank you guys so much. No, but really, but then the stimulus ran out. I'm like, okay, whoa, I have to do something. I have to get a job. We're going to be out on the street. And my sister-in-law said, hey, I have a job for you. It would be really good. I think you'd be good at it. You've worked with kids with trauma before. I didn't tell her what was going on. She didn't know. And she could have gotten me a job killing cows to, 6 hours a day or 12 hours a day. And I'd have been like, great, I'll dig ditches for money. I just need money in the checking account. And so that is when I started working in treatment. Now, for many of you, you might go, oh, because I've had some people who get really upset with that. And they're like, you are living a lie. And I'd say, you're right. I was lying to myself because I didn't know it. How am I supposed to know what I don't know? But that was the start of my journey. Now, I knew I couldn't use and go there. That won't fly for very long. So I did what any good alcoholic does. I set rules for myself. But just like any good alcoholic, I break rules. Any rule I set for myself, any limit, I break it right away. Only this, only at this time, only here, only with these people, I break them all. I break them all and go, how did that happen? Oh, and that's exactly what happened. So after, maybe a month or so of working there, I break a rule. And I'm doing my thing before work. And I have this moment of clarity. If you've had one, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, for me, I'm floating above myself. I'm watching myself do the thing. And I have this moment where I'm like, this is so boring. This is so boring. And I don't even know why I'm doing this. I'm not getting anything out of this. I don't remember the last time I got anything out of this. And that moment lasted 2 seconds. I went right back. Because when my alcoholism tells me to jump untreated, I don't ask questions. I just jump. But by the grace of God, that moment stuck with me. And I went to work. I was terrified. I said, wow, it asked you to dance and you just danced. You had no fight. You knew where this led. You knew this was bad. You've been here how many freaking times? And yet you went back. I said, are you dumb? Are you crazy? A little. Yeah. I didn't know to what extent. So I did what any good alcoholic does. I ran to the internet trying to convince myself I wasn't. I just want you to know, if you're already taking a yes or no, a yes or no questionnaire, if you're an alcoholic or an addict, you kind of know the answer already. But I answer yes to all 20 questions. I answer yes to the additional ones. And then it says, great. If you answered yes to 3, I said 3. Oh boy. I said, I'm in deep trouble. And so what I did was I said, okay, I remember them talking something about meetings because I knew nothing about the steps. I knew nothing about meetings. I was just starting to become aware of it. I said, I'm going to go to one of these, but I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm going to go on my break. I didn't know how they worked. And so I said, hey, everybody, I'm taking a break. I took a laptop. I went to this little conference room and I set it up. And the meeting starts. Person asks, are there any newcomers here with the sobriety or serenity threatening issue who want to introduce themselves? And that was the first time. It was the first time I ever picked up that spiritual telephone. And I truly made my first prayer that wasn't just, God, please save me. Do this and I'll do this for you. There was no negotiation. It was just surrendering. And I said, I'm Kyle and I'm tired. I'm tired. And I I really don't want to keep doing this. And I just don't know what to do anymore. And I could really use some help. And that was the first time God ever answered my prayers immediately. I had a coworker walk in right as I said that. And he looked at me and he looked at the computer. He said, Kyle, what are you doing? And this dude was 32 years sober in a fellowship. He knew exactly what I was doing. And, at that point, like, my cup of lies was full. I couldn't lie anymore. Not to him, not to me. And so I told him a little bit about what was going on. I'd love to tell you that man and I rode off into the sunset together, arm in arm, as sponsor and sponsee. That did not happen. That did not happen. He gave me a step working guide. He gave me a phone number. He said, good luck. And I felt like the world's biggest piece of garbage. I said, wow, like there's nobody in this world who's felt this way, who knows like just the incomprehensible demoralization. Like this is where life took me, for all my best plans, all my designs, like this is where I'm at. But God is good, real good. There was one person working left in that building. And I went back to where he was at, where the clients had all gone to bed. Thank God he spared me that. And he said, Kyle, are you okay? And I couldn't say anything to him. I was, going through it. He said, is it a relationship problem? Is it a work problem? But he's asking me all these questions and he pauses. He says, is this a sobriety problem? And I just cried and I nodded. Now I know for many people, they do this more formally. But for me, that was my first foray truly into step one, because I had acknowledged that I was an addict. I was an alcoholic. Like I kind of knew something was different up here, but I didn't know what that really meant. That wasn't fully admitting it. I was acknowledging that, but admitting it means swallowing that information, fully knowing, oh, I can't change this part. And that information made the walk from my brain to my chest, into my heart. And he 12-stepped me exactly the way it says in the book, with no frill. He told me his story. And he told me things about myself that I didn't know that I knew. How did you know I woke up like that? How did you know that I felt that way ever since I was a little boy, way before using was there? How did you know that this got boring? And he, we just started relating back and forth, just like alcoholic number 3. I was like, that's me. That's me. Oh my God. How did you? It was like talking to someone for the very first time who read my mind. And I said, what do you do? He said, I go to meetings. I work the steps. To fast forward a bit, I left that night thinking, okay, I got to do this. And I was really worried about some of these steps. Of course, I was every Friday I knew he was working. I was like, I have to go back and talk to him. That's the only guy in the world who's ever known what I'm like. I need to see him again. And he kept pushing me towards the steps and just being supportive and hearing me. And I was so afraid of certain steps. And I remember calling a guy towards my first day, and he's, I'm worried about step 9, of course. I have to go tell people what? I have to tell her this? And he said, Kyle, you're not there yet. Don't worry about that. Just know that at the end of this, you get to be free. And that's what I wanted, because I was not free. And now I was doing some online meetings. And thank y'all for having me. And I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum, but as someone who's new in sobriety, I was really lacking a lot of fellowship. And I was, it was hard for me to focus at first because I was new in sobriety. I'm all over the place. That whole first month, I didn't know what was up, down, left, right. I thought it was Tuesday. It's Thursday. I'm mad at you. I don't know why. And I've made all the new guy mistakes. And luckily, I've had a lot of guys around me who said, Kyle, be quiet. Kyle, why don't you just chill out and work on this? Giving me clear, I didn't need suggestions. I needed directions. Okay. And some of the suggestions they were giving me were like, the building is on fire. I suggest you leave, and I needed to just follow them. And that's what these steps really are for me. They are suggestions, but they're heavily suggested. And so, I was going to some online meetings and it wasn't really working for me. I wasn't really like, okay, I'm not getting there. And my grand sponsor, the guy that first 12-stepped me, was like, why don't you go to the Club 24 where my home group is at? And this was height of COVID. We knew nothing about nothing. And I said, I don't want to die. He said, Kyle, you are going to die. Don't let it be from this. And they were open throughout the whole pandemic. They masked. They made a lot of precautions. And I said, okay. I mean, I'm already working. I obviously I put myself in here. What's one more thing? And so I went. And things began to change because I had the gift of desperation. I was willing to do whatever you told me to do in the way you told me to do it because I was done fighting. I was done trying to do it my own way. I tried a lot of different goofy ways to get sober. I'll do this artist way, this creative program. I'll do this maintenance program. It all doesn't work because it doesn't address the spiritual malady that is inherent in this program. See, a lot of new people, what I ended up learning as I'm going through the steps, that it wasn't just about the physical allergy. If I pick up the first one, I don't know when it's going to stop. I don't know what's going to happen. It's not just about the phenomenon of craving that when I pick up and that phenomenon of craving starts, that I just keep thinking about it all the time, no matter, it doesn't even have to be around. And that even after some period of time dry without alcohol, I'm restless, irritable, and discontent. I don't know how to live life, just Kyle. I don't know how to meet life on life's terms. And that's the biggest part of this disease that most new people don't understand, that it's threefold. Because if we were able to just dry you out, then we would all just go to, detox treatment centers for 6 weeks, walk out and go live normal lives. But we don't, because I don't know how to just meet the stressors of life. So I started working the steps in the way that they told me to. They told me to get a sponsor. I said, okay, I don't even know who that is. Truly and honestly, I don't care. I went up to a woman in my home group. I knew it couldn't be her. I said, can you lead me to a sponsor? She literally took me by the hand, took me over to my first sponsor, Chris, and said, here he is. I said, okay, tell me what to do, Chris. And so we worked, and I did the fourth step in the way, I now it says in the book that with the third step prayer, it could be a little, the wording is optional. He said, it's not optional. I said, do I have to get on my knees? He said, yes. He said, yes, you do. I said, okay. I said, bro, I would have done the prayer if to stand on my head, if that's what you told me to do, as long as it's going to work, because that's what I wanted. I'm like, just tell me how this works. I just desperately want to stop drinking. And then I don't know when it happened throughout the steps, but I stopped thinking about it. That obsession got lifted. I started to become more interested in what was going on in the day. After my fourth and fifth step, I felt like 100 pounds was lifted off me, and all the things that I thought I was going to die with. And I told it to someone else, and I truly started to feel what freedom felt like. Really free. I started doing my and I know I'm running out of time here. I started to do my 8th and 9th step amends in the way that my sponsors and the guys around me were telling me to make them. I wasn't just going around saying, I'm so sorry, everybody. Apology World Tour. No. That's not what that step is. It's not an apology world tour. There's a process to this and a reason and a way we do things to not hurt people. And I did them in the way that I was told to, even when I was afraid, desperately afraid of what will they say. But each step prepared me for the next one. And I started to gain what's called in the book this God consciousness. Now, don't be afraid of that word. If you don't like God or have a big sky friend, or you're like, that invokes a lot of religious trauma, that's cool, dog. You belong here still. Think of it as good, orderly direction. If that suits you, whatever concept is fine. AA doesn't tell you what God to believe in or what kind of concept. Just believe in something outside of yourself. And I started to gain a relationship with that. And it's become one of the most central parts of my life. Not only just because it's necessary for me to continue to living, to not just drink, but to feel like a part of the human race. It also is one of the things that brings me the most strength, comfort, and depth to this life. It's one of the most important things that I try and cultivate throughout a day. I'm not always perfect, but it is very key for me. So today, what I do, I try and work 10, 11, and 12 to the best of my ability. I've just done another 4th and 5th step with my newest sponsor, and I'm doing the steps in the way that they say, and I continue to work these. I continue to live them, because these aren't steps that you just work and you're done. You turn your tassel to the left. That ain't it. I've seen a lot of graduated members of AA in my short time here, and they are miserable people. People who are like, I don't sponsor guys anymore. I go to one meeting a week, if that, and I've gotten what I've gotten. And they go right back to suffering from that spiritual malady. I see it time and time again, and there's nothing I can really do. I'm powerless over them. Today, I sponsor guys when they ask. It's one of the highlights of my life today to read the new book with other guys. And I never would have thought that 6 years ago you would have told me that reading a book with the word God in it would be something I would look forward to. And it's one of the best things that happens in a week, because when I start to talk about things in here, I talk about my experience and we connect, I feel it. And alcoholics are a type of people, if you're anything like me, you don't believe it when you see it. You don't even believe it when you do it. You believe it when you feel it. You believe it when you truly feel it. You didn't believe that, like, oh, I got that stuff right here. Okay, bet. You believed it when you ingested it, when you smoked it, when you drank it, when you started. Then you're like, oh, whoa, whoo-hoo. We believe it when we feel it. So throughout all of these, if you relate, if you're inspired to do these steps, I encourage you not to take my word for it. I encourage you not to just sit here and just like, oh, cool. Yeah, that was so great. I encourage you to go out and do it, because when you do it, then and only then will you feel it. For me, like I said, I still keep a sponsor, or I sponsor. I have a home group. I have a service position. All of those things were the things they suggested to me in my early days, and they're all things I still need to do today. And they're things I want to do today. I say that not to be like, I'm Mr. AA. Ho, ho. That's not it. I say that because I see a lot of guys here who, I don't want to offend anybody here. So if you say this, that's cool. But I want to provide some perspective. Meeting makers make it. I heard that a lot, especially coming up. Meeting makers make it. I'm like, good. I'm making it to every 10 a.m. meeting that the club has because I need to. And then my grand sponsor hit me with this cold piece. He said, Kyle, don't say that anymore. Don't say meeting makers made it. Meeting makers make meetings. He said, what are you doing the other 23 hours of the day? Are you living these steps out there? Because it's real easy to be Mr. AA here. It's really easy to talk a good game, and you're smart, Kyle. That's your biggest problem, is that you're smart and you can talk this talk. You could put this all together, but smart guys don't last here because they think they're too smart for this. They don't want to take suggestions. I need you to just do. I need you to go out there and do this. Are you living these steps? Or are you just coming into meetings and just, you're at a meeting? I'm taking my alcoholism to this meeting. Don't get me wrong. Meetings are a part of my recovery, central. They're incredibly important. But if that's all I'm doing, especially if I don't have a sponsor, I don't have the steps, I'm just going to meetings, dude, you're just at another place. You're not recovering in that way from that hopeless state of mind and body. Now, if you're not at that point yet, fine. Keep coming to meetings. Keep coming till you hear your story enough where you go, I want what that woman has. I want what that man has. I'll take half of what he has. Because there were some people there. And if that's the case, go up and ask them how they did that. And if you are so willing to follow them, I would say to do it. To do it. Because that's the only way this will work. And my experience will not be your experience. Each person's experience through this step is totally bespoke. It's so different. Now, now the inherent contradiction is, when I did my fourth and fifth, when I went through all that, I found that I was a garden variety drunk. I was not so unique as I once thought. I'm like, actually, I'm just like this guy. There are people in my home, the club, who we came from all different walks of life, all different social demographics. I'm like, what is this dude from Burger King going to tell me about me that I don't know? Everything. He told my story, exactly what I felt. I'm like, wow, dang. And the support and love, unconditional love that was present in that room is amazing. And it's still there today. And it's not just available for me. I know I'm in Cleveland and we joke saying we have the homegrown AA at the source, the top secret AA. But really, that love is available for anybody here in AA. Every single one of you is available to it. And all you have to do is be able to walk through those doors and say, do it. I'll do whatever you say. Just tell me and I'll do it in the way that you tell me it. You don't have to like it, and you don't have to necessarily know with certainty that this is going to work. But I just need you to trust. That's what I have on the side of my big book here. Trust. Just trust that something will happen here. Trust that you will be living a life beyond your wildest dreams, not the ones you're currently thinking of now, but a one that is provided for you, that you'll say, wow, I couldn't have even thought of this for myself, that I would be doing this and enjoying it, and that I would become a key piece in other people's lives. I used to walk into rooms when I was working in the theater, and they would say things like, oh, You're here. Cool. Now there's that. We have this problem in you. And now, as a direct result of the program, not anything about me, I have people who will say, thank you so much for being here. We needed you here. And that's not me. That comes from a power much, much greater than me. And it's available to everybody here. And that's a very beautiful thing to me. One of the last things that I'll say was reading Bill's story with a guy yesterday, and this really, I read this thing thousands of times at this point. It's still just, it really strikes me. I even underlined this years ago, and I'm like, oh, wow, look at that. Did they write that part? This is after Ebby and Bill were talking. Bill is getting 12-stepped. My friend promised me when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my creator. It'll be a newer one than the one you're thinking of right now. That would have the elements of a way of living which answered all my problems. And belief in the power of God, however that is, plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain the new order of things were the essential requirements. That's really all it's needed for you. I need you to have that willingness and honesty, and you will see a new order of living. This won't just become a program that's a one and done. Oh, I did my time in AA. I've got my paper signed. It will become a new way of living, and it will be one that, if it's anything like mine, you will actually want to live it. I've woken up and said, thank God I'm in this life again, which is a far cry from being in a place where I thought if I just went to sleep and never woke up again, that would be great. And now I would pick this life out of a draft first. And I say, thank God I'm an alcoholic. Thank God for this disease, because this solution, I got to experience it for free. And all it took was coming to a place of willingness to say, please show me what I can do. And everyone in AA saying, of course.
Everything you do, the answer lies inside you.